The notebook hit the table at the exact second the front door slammed. Seo-yoon didn't look up. Her pencil kept moving, sketching a square, then a triangle inside it, then crossing both out. Across from her, Josh was already on his feet, halfway to the hallway, one sock on and one sock dangling from his hand like he'd forgotten what socks were for. "Don't," Seo-yoon said without looking up. "Let him breathe first." "He's not breathing. Listen to him." They both went quiet. From the hallway came the sound of their father setting his keys down. Not the usual clatter, the thunk jingle thunk he did every evening like a tiny drumroll for himself. Tonight the keys landed soft, careful, like he was setting down something that might wake up if he wasn't gentle. That was worse than slamming. They both knew it. Welcome to Black Silk Stories, the home of Afro-Korean stories that hit different. Subscribe, drop a comment, and do not go anywhere. This is only the beginning. Their father, Clark, stood in the doorway of the kitchen still wearing his coat, his tie loosened just enough to show he'd loosened it on the subway, not at home, like he couldn't wait one more minute to feel like himself again. He was a tall man who usually filled a room without trying. Tonight he looked like he was trying to take up less space. "Appa," Soo-yoon said, sliding off her chair. "You're early." "I left early." He said it like a confession. Josh appeared at his side, the lone sock still in his fist. "Did something happen? Go finish your homework, the both of you." That was the wrong thing to say to two 7-year-olds who had spent their entire lives reading rooms before they read books. Seo-yoon and Josh exchanged one look. Half a second, no words needed. And homework was forgotten before their father had even reached the refrigerator. Their mother, Hannah, came in from the bedroom already pulling her cardigan tighter around herself. The way she did when the apartment wasn't actually cold but something else was. "Clark, you're back already." "I told them I needed air." "Who's them?" He didn't answer right away. He opened the fridge, looked into it like the answer might be sitting next to the kimchi, and closed it again without taking anything out. "Director Park called a meeting," he said finally, "about the Lansbury proposal." Hannah's face changed in a way only someone married to him for 9 years would catch. A small drop at the corner of her mouth, gone almost as fast as it came. "The one you've been working on for 3 months?" "The one I've been working on for 3 months. He pulled a chair out and sat down heavy, like the chair had been waiting for him to stop standing. "Someone leaked it. The whole proposal. Every figure, every projected client name. It's sitting in a competitor's inbox right now. And they think it was you." It wasn't a question. Hannah already knew. She'd known from the way he set his keys down. In the hallway, pressed against the wall just out of sight, Soo-yoon grabbed Josh's wrist before he could lean any further forward. "They think Appa stole something," she whispered. "He didn't steal anything. Appa doesn't even take the last piece of gel off without asking." "I know that. They don't." Josh's face did the thing it always did when he was thinking hard. Eyebrows pulling together, bottom lip pushed out just slightly, like his whole face was trying to solve a math problem his mouth hadn't agreed to yet. He was wearing his favorite hoodie, the dark green one with the small embroidered cowrie shells stitched along the cuff, a gift from their grandmother in Atlanta that he refused to take off even when it needed washing. Seo-yoon beside him had changed out of her school uniform into a soft yellow dress with a wide sash at the waist, the fabric patterned faintly with a print their mother had found in a Hongdae market that mixed traditional Korean cloud motifs with small geometric ankara shapes along the hem, something Hannah had specially commissioned after Josh complained, half joking, that Seo-yoon never matched him. It mattered to both of them, more than either would say out loud. Looking like they belonged to both halves of themselves. "We have to help him," Seo-yoon said. We're 7 and we know Appa didn't do it. That's more than the grown-ups know right now." Back in the kitchen, the conversation had only gotten heavier. "They've already started talking about leave," Clark said. "Unpaid. Until the investigation is done." "That's not fair." Hannah's voice cracked slightly on fair, the word too small for what she meant. "You didn't do this." "I know I didn't do this." For the first time since walking in, his voice rose, not at her, just up, like it had nowhere else to go. "But it doesn't matter what I know. Director Park needs someone to blame before the board meeting Friday. And I'm the only one on that team who joined less than 2 years ago. I'm the only one who—" He stopped himself. "Who what?" Hannah asked. "Nothing. Clark. I'm the only one who doesn't look like everyone else in that room, Hannah. That's what." The silence after that sentence had weight to it. Even from the hallway the twins felt it land. Seo-yoon's hand found Josh's again. And this time it was her holding on. They didn't sleep that night. Not really. Around 11, Josh crept into Seo-yoon's room with his blanket dragging behind him like a small gray ghost, and found her already sitting up, notebook open on her knees, a single word written at the top of the page, suspects. You started without me. You were busy not sleeping in your own room. I figured you'd come. He climbed onto the bed and looked at the page. Under suspects she'd written 3 names, each one a co-worker of their father's they'd met at least once. At office parties at the summer picnic 2 years ago. At the one time Clark had brought them in on a Saturday because the babysitter canceled. Mr. Choi, Josh read aloud. Ms. Bae. And, he squinted. Director Park? You always suspect the person who's most upset about it. People who didn't do something don't usually need to be the loudest about being mad. Where'd you learn that? Grandma. She said it about Auntie Frida's missing jacket that one Christmas. Josh considered this with the seriousness of a much older person. Okay. So how do we find out which one? Seo-yoon chewed the end of her pencil. We need to know who else knew about the proposal. Not just who works on the team. Who knew the details, the numbers, the client names. Appa said it was everything. Someone didn't guess that. Someone had it. Had it how? That's the part we don't know yet. Outside her window, the city had gone quiet the way Seoul never quite managed to. Not silent, just lower hums instead of noise. Josh pulled his knees up under his blanket and looked at his sister with the particular trust of someone who had shared a womb with her, and never once doubted that trust was misplaced. We're really doing this, he said. It wasn't a question either. We're really doing this. The next morning, breakfast was quiet in the way only a kitchen that knows something is wrong can be quiet. Hannah moved between the stove and the table without her usual humming. Clark sat with a cup of coffee he wasn't drinking, scrolling through something on his phone with his jaw tight. Appa, Josh said, mouthful of egg. Who else knew about the proposal? Like exactly what was in it? Clark looked up, surprised enough to almost smile. Why do you want to know that? Just curious. It's a work thing, Josh, Hannah said gently, setting down a plate. Eat your breakfast. I'm just asking who knew, Josh pressed, with a particular stubbornness that had gotten him sent to the corner of his classroom twice this semester. Not the secret stuff. Just who knew there was secret stuff. Clark set his phone down slowly. There was something in his son's question, simple, almost too simple, that made him actually think about it instead of brushing past it. My team, obviously. Choi Bae, 2 others on the floor. Director Park, since he had to approve the final draft before it went up to the board. He paused. And IT, I suppose, since the file was stored on the shared drive. Seo-yoon looked up sharply at that. Who's in IT? What does that have to do with anything? Just answer, she said, in a voice that startled both her parents slightly with how much it sounded like an adult's. Clark exchanged a glance with Hannah, the kind of glance parents give each other when their children say something that's either nothing at all, or the beginning of something they should be paying closer attention to. There's a man named Mr. June, Clark said slowly. He manages the shared servers. Why? Seo-yoon didn't answer. She was already writing the name down. After their father left for the office, late, reluctant, like a man walking toward a verdict instead of a desk, the twins sat at the kitchen table with the notebook between them, now considerably less empty than the night before. Okay, Seo-yoon said. We have 4 people who could have taken the file off the shared drive without Appa's team knowing. Choi Bae, Director Park, and this Mr. June person. Director Park called the meeting that got Appa in trouble in the first place, Josh said. Doesn't that make him look guilty? Or it makes him look like someone trying to seem like he's taking it seriously so nobody suspects him. Josh blinked. That's sneaky. People who do sneaky things are usually sneaky about more than one thing. He looked at his sister with something between awe and mild fear, which was, more or less, how he'd felt about her their entire lives. How do we even talk to any of these people? We're kids. They're not going to tell 2 7-year-olds anything. Seo-yoon tapped her pencil against the table, thinking. Then her face changed. Not quite a smile but close, the specific expression she wore right before she suggested something that would absolutely get them in trouble if their mother found out in advance. We don't need them to tell us anything, she said. We just need to get into that office Saturday, when Appa says almost nobody's there. We need to see who's already worried enough to be cleaning something up. Mom will never let us go. Mom doesn't have to know exactly why we're going. Outside, a delivery scooter buzzed past the window. And somewhere down the hall their mother's footsteps started toward the kitchen. Seo-yoon closed the notebook fast, the cover snapping shut over 4 names, 1 plan, and the particular fearlessness that only exists in people who have not yet learned all the reasons they should be afraid. Saturday morning arrived gray and quiet, the kind of sky Seoul wore like a held breath. Hannah had errands, the dry cleaner, the bank, a stop at her sister's that would take at least 2 hours if her sister had anything to say about it, which she always did. That left a window. Seo-yoon had been counting on it since Thursday. "We're not doing anything fun," she told Josh as they got dressed. "We're going to Appa's office building. We tell Mom we want to see where he works. That's all. That's the whole good thing." That's not even a good thing to say to Mom. It doesn't need to be good. It needs to be true enough that nobody checks it twice. Josh pulled on his outfit without complaint for once. A crisp white shirt under a small fitted vest stitched with thin gold thread along the collar, paired with dark trousers his grandmother had hemmed herself the last time she visited, insisting a man should look put together even at 7, especially at 7, since that's when people decide what kind of person you'll grow up to be. Seo-yoon wore a structured navy jacket over a pleated skirt, the jacket lining a quiet burst of Kent-inspired pattern that only showed when she moved her arms. Her mother's idea, something Hannah had once called looking serious on the outside, yourself on the inside. Today, dressing carefully didn't feel like vanity, felt like armor. "You look like a tiny lawyer," Josh said. "Good. That's the point." Clark hadn't planned on going in, but the email from Director Park had arrived at 6 that morning. Additional follow-up required, please come in if possible, and a man on unpaid leave doesn't get to say no to additional follow-up, even on a Saturday, even when it isn't really a request. He hadn't expected the twins to ask to come. "You want to see my office?" he repeated, standing in the doorway with his coat half-buttoned, looking at his children like they'd suggested something in a foreign language. "We never have," Seo-yoon said, which was true. That was the trick to a good lie, anchoring it in something real enough that the rest could hide behind it. "It's not exciting, you know. Death, computers, bad coffee. We don't care," Josh said. "We want to see where you go every day." Something in Clark's face softened despite everything sitting heavy on his shoulders. Maybe it was that, 2 small people wanting to know his world on a day, when the rest of his world seemed determined to push him out of it. "Fine," he said. "But you stay where I can see you. This is serious, the 2 of you understand? Today is serious." "We understand," Soo-yoon said, and meant it more than he knew. The office on a Saturday was a different animal than the one Clark usually described. Half-lit, mostly empty, the kind of quiet that made every small sound feel loud. A photocopier hummed somewhere down the hall. Director Park's office light was on, door cracked, his voice low on a phone call neither twin could make out. "Sit here," Clark told them, settling them at an empty desk near his own with a tablet loaded with cartoons, the universal bribe of distracted parents everywhere. "I'll be 20 minutes. Maybe less." The second he was out of sight, the tablet went dark and forgotten on the desk. "Okay," Soo-yoon whispered. "Choi's desk is the one with the little cactus. Bae's is by the window. We're looking for anything weird. Anything someone wouldn't want found." "What does weird look like?" "I don't know yet. That's why we're looking." They moved like the building belonged to someone else's children. Quick, quiet, careful not to touch what didn't need touching. Choi's desk held nothing but a stack of folders labeled in Korean. Josh couldn't read, and a half-eaten pack of gum. Bae's was tidier, almost suspiciously so, everything squared at right angles, nothing personal at all. It was the third desk, pushed into a corner, half hidden behind a server rack humming with a low mechanical breath, that made Soo-yoon stop walking. A nameplate read June IT, and beside the monitor, half tucked under a mouse pad like someone had meant to hide it better and gotten interrupted, sat a single printed page. A spreadsheet, numbers in neat columns. At the top in bold, Lansbury Proposal Draft 3. Josh's breath caught. "Nuna. I see it." Footsteps. Not Clark's, heavier, faster, coming from the direction of the break room. Soo-yoon grabbed Josh's sleeve and pulled him behind the server rack just as a man rounded the corner. Phone pressed to his ear, voice tight and low. "No, I told you it's handled. The board doesn't need to know where it came from, they just need someone to blame, and right now that's not me, so." He stopped walking. "Stop talking." He was standing right beside his own desk, looking down at the spreadsheet that wasn't quite hidden enough. His face went pale. "I have to call you back," he muttered and hung up. From behind the server rack, The twins watched Mr. June snatch the page up, fold it twice, and shove it into his jacket pocket like it had burned him. His hands were shaking just slightly, the kind of shake that comes from being almost caught, not from being caught. Seo-yoon's heart was pounding so hard she was sure it was audible over the server hum. Beside her, Josh had gone very still, the way he did right before he was about to do something either very brave or very foolish, sometimes both at once. He stepped out from behind the rack. "That's Appa's proposal," Josh said. Mr. June spun around so fast he nearly knocked over his own chair. For a long moment he just stared at the small boy in the gold-threaded vest standing in front of him like a tiny, immovable accusation. Where did you?" He looked past Josh and found Seo-yoon emerging too, and something in his face cracked open. The particular panic of an adult realizing the only witnesses to what he'd done were 7 years old and entirely unafraid of him. "You're the one who leaked it," Seo-yoon said. Not a question. She'd learned that much from her father's voice the other night. Some sentences land harder when they aren't asked. "Not our dad. You don't understand anything about. We understand you're holding the proposal you said our dad stole," Josh said. "And we understand Appa's about to lose his job for something you did." Mr. June's mouth opened and closed twice before anything came out. I didn't mean for it to go that far. I sent it to a friend just to get advice, just a draft, and he works for a competitor. I didn't think he'd actually..." He stopped himself, hearing how it sounded out loud for the first time maybe ever. "That sounds like you did mean it," Seo-yoon said quietly. "You just didn't mean to get caught." The break room door opened and Clark stepped out, drawn by the noise, Director Park half a step behind him still finishing whatever conversation they'd been having. Clark's eyes went from his children, standing where they absolutely should not have been, to Mr. June's pale face, to the folded paper crushed in his fist. "What's going on here?" For one terrible second nobody answered. Then Josh, who had never once in his life been able to keep his mouth shut when it mattered most, said, "Mr. June has it. The real proposal. He had it on his desk." Director Park's expression shifted instantly, confusion, then a sharper, colder kind of attention, the look of a man recalculating everything he thought he already understood. "June, what is your son talking about?" "Nothing, sir. Show him," Seo-yoon said, eyes fixed on Mr. June with a steadiness that made the grown man flinch. "Show him what's in your pocket." The silence stretched long enough that it became its own kind of answer. Then, slowly, shoulders dropping like something had finally given out on him, Mr. June reached into his jacket and held out the folded page. Director Park took it, unfolded it and read for a long moment. When he looked up it wasn't at the twins. It was at Clark and then more carefully at Mr. June. "My office," Director Park said. "Now." Later, much later, after statements were taken and Director Park had said the word apologized to Clark in a tone that suggested he meant it more than he was used to meaning anything, the four of them sat in a nearly empty company cafeteria, the overhead lights humming the same low hum as everything else in that building on a Saturday. Clark hadn't said much since it happened. He kept looking at his children like he was seeing something in them for the first time, even though they'd been right in front of him their whole lives. "You two were supposed to be at the desk," he said finally. "With the tablet." "The tablet was boring," Josh said. "You could have gotten hurt. You could have made things worse. You could have..." He stopped, pressing the heel of his hand briefly against his eyes. When he spoke again his voice had gone soft in a way the twins rarely heard. "You could have proven your father wrong before he was even cleared. Do you understand what would have happened if you were wrong about him?" "We weren't wrong about you," Seo-yoon said simply. "We knew. We just had to show everyone else." Clark looked at his daughter, sharp-eyed, jacket still buttoned properly despite everything, looking at him like the outcome had never once been in doubt, and then at his son, gold thread catching the cafeteria light, chin lifted with the particular pride of someone who'd said something true and watched it land exactly right. "Your grandmother is never going to let me hear the end of this," Clark said, and for the first time all week he laughed. That night, Hannah tucked the twins in together, both of them too wound up from the day to be in separate rooms, the way they'd slept as infants and still preferred when something big had happened. She sat on the edge of Seo-yoon's bed, smoothing the blanket over both of them. "Your father told me everything," she said. "Every part of it." "Are we in trouble?" Josh asked, already half asleep. "You snuck off, lied about why you wanted to come, and put yourselves somewhere you shouldn't have been." Hannah paused. "You're in a small amount of trouble." "And the other amount?" Hannah smiled. The first easy smile either of them had seen on her in days. The other amount is something else entirely. She turned off the lamp, and in the dark, Seo-yoon reached over and found her brother's hand the way she had every night of her life before this one, and every night since. Outside, Seoul kept humming the way it always did. Indifferent to the fact that inside one small apartment, two 7-year-olds had just proven that the people who notice the most are rarely the ones anyone expects to be watching. You just watched the Afro-Korean twins solved a case the grown-ups couldn't. If this story made you feel something, you already know what to do. Subscribe to Black Silk Stories, drop your thoughts in the comments, and stay close. The Afro-Korean stories that hit different don't stop here.